So welcome everyone. This is a 90-minute workshop where I'll introduce coaches to the ICF Competence number 2, Embodies a Coaching Mindset. And what I'll be covering is an overview of this updated ICF competency model, the ICF updated competency model as a whole, and how it's different from and an improvement on the previous model, an explanation of what a coaching mindset is, and how to embody it by using the updated PCC markers, the definition of the updated competency number 2, embodies a coaching mindset, and an explanation of the 8 parameters stated in the definition, how to implement reflective practice in your coaching, and I'll provide you with a suggested template for reflective practice. There will be plenty of time for questions and answers throughout the workshop. I'll be pausing periodically for that, and also at the end. So I've covered, I've explained what I think I'm going to cover for this session, but are there any other issues that you'd like me to cover around a coaching mindset? You could either raise your hand or put it into the chat. I'll just pause for a few moments to see if anything's coming up. Okay, nothing so far, that's cool. You're welcome to use the virtual tools on the bottom of your Zoom toolbar to raise a virtual hand to ask a question, or you can post questions in the chat, and I'll ask Kat to keep an eye on the chat for me and prompt me if there's a need to answer a particular question. Please be aware that Kat is recording this webinar for Animas, and she will be sharing it on YouTube. So if you have any questions or comments, please do not mention any confidential details, for example, anything relating to your clients. Any questions before we start? Not pick up anything? Okay, lovely. So let's get stuck in. So for the context for this particular competence is number 2, embodies a coaching mindset. It's part of the overall ICF updated competency model. The ICF competencies are, in my view, its crown jewels. They conducted a rigorous 24-month coaching practice analysis, and they announced this updated core competency model in November 2019. And then shortly after that, in January 2020, they also introduced a new ICF Code of Ethics. So how is the ICF updated competency model different? The new updated model is shorter and simpler. It went down by about 1/3. It was reduced from about 1,500 words to about 1,100 words, and the number of competencies was reduced from 11 to 8. It's easy to understand and to use. Everything of value in the previous model has been carried forward into the updated model, while duplication and unnecessary elements have been removed, thus simplifying the model. To my mind, the new competency model is a better reflection of the natural flow of a coaching session. And what's more relevant to us here today, new concepts have been added, like embodies a coaching mindset. That wasn't in the previous model. And this makes the competency model more like what I call a yellow box junction that you see on the roads. It encourages all coaches to do what the good coaches have always done. And this particular competence, number 2, embodies a coaching mindset, highlights the importance of reflective practice, which in my view is key to coach learning and development. So what is a coaching mindset, and how do we know when we're embodying it? So I'd like to do the first screen share, and I'm going to take you to the updated ICF model and the PCC markers. So let's just do a quick screen share on that. So you should be seeing something, which is the ICF logo, which says PCC markers. You seeing those, Kat? Give me a nod. Yeah, cool. And I'm going to take you to the updated markers. The current markers are still there. They probably should be called the previous markers now, because we're now definitely moved to the updated model. So there's competence number 2, embodies a coaching mindset. So a coaching mindset is one that is open, curious, flexible, and client-centered. And it's a process that requires ongoing learning and development, establishing reflective practice, and preparing for sessions. That's the essence of what it's about. Now, as it says here, these elements will take place over the course of a coach's professional journey, cannot be fully captured in a single moment. However, certain elements of this competency may be demonstrated within a coaching conversation. And these particular behaviours are assessed and articulated through the following PCC markers. So we'll have a quick look at those. So if we go down to these markers, 4.1, coach acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights and work in the coaching process. 4.3, acknowledges and supports the client's expression of feelings, perceptions, concerns, beliefs or suggestions. And 4.4, coach partners with the client by inviting the client to respond in any way to the coach's contributions and accepts the client's contributions. And we're also looking at 5.1 through to 5.4. Coach acts in response to the whole person of the client, the who. Coach acts in response to what the client wants to accomplish throughout the session, the what. The coach partners with the client by supporting the client to choose what happens in the session. And 5.4, the coach demonstrates curiosity to learn more about the client. In the listening actively competence, marker 6.1, the coach's questions and observations are customized by using what the coach has learned about who the client is or the client's situation. And 6.5, the coach inquires about or explores how the client currently perceives themselves or their world. And finally, within an evoking awareness competence, these two markers are relevant. The coach asks questions about their client, such as their current way of thinking, feeling, values, needs, wants, beliefs, or behavior. And the coach shares without attachment observations, intuitions, comments, thoughts, or feelings, invites the client's exploration through verbal or tonal invitation. And so to know when you're embodying a coaching mindset, you can use these PCC markers, and in particular, those that are listed for competence number 2, which are a scrape across the other markers, 4.1 to 4.4, 5.1 through to 5.4, 6.1, 6.5, 7.1, 7.5, to evaluate your own coaching sessions. And then you can check how many of those markers for competence number 2 you've observed. And as a rule of thumb, if you've observed half or more of those markers, then you could probably say that you are embodying a coaching mindset. And if it's fewer than that, then you've probably got some work to do. So I'm going to stop the screen share there and just pause to see if there are any questions coming up. So let's now look at the definition of competence number 2, embodies a coaching mindset. So this time I'm going to share something a little bit different, which is the ICF competence model itself. So here we go. So you should be seeing on the screen now something which says ICF Core Competencies. And we're going to go down again to the updated model. Open that up. We go down to embodies a coaching mindset. So the definition there is development and maintains a mindset is open, curious, flexible, and client-centered. And within this definition, there are 8 parameters. So let's look at each of these in turn. The first one acknowledges that clients are responsible for their own choices. Now this links to one of the principles of coaching, and I found these many years ago in the coaching manual by Julie Starr. When you do the NMS diploma, in those days, going back a few years now, we had to review an appropriate coaching textbook or something similar. And I chose the coaching manual. And on page 30, she has a list of 7 coaching principles. And number 3 is the coachee is responsible for the results they are creating. And that, for me, is an explanation of what this means. Acknowledges that coachees are responsible for their own choices. In other words, the coachee is responsible for their life, their career, their business, their relationships, their health and well-being, whatever it is that they're bringing to the session, not the coach. And as coaches, we have no responsibility to fix the coachee or their life, their career, their business, their situation. And when you understand this, it takes the pressure off you as a coach to perform or to achieve any given outcome for your client. And you're then able to coach powerfully following the client's agenda and not worry about where they start and where they end up in a session. That really is their responsibility. You're just there to facilitate them. Where they actually get to is completely up to them. The second parameter engages in ongoing learning and development as a coach. Now, if you continue with your coaching journey to become a member of the ICF and then proceed to having one of their credentials, Associate Certified Coach, Professional Certified Coach, or in due course, Master Certified Coach, MCC, then you will be required to undertake continuing coach education units to maintain your credential. So I'm a professionally certified coach. I have to have 40 continuing coach education units in order to renew my credential in about a year's time. And that takes place over a sort of roughly 3-year cycle. And each unit is in simple terms, is 1 hour. So you need 40 hours of CPD training in order to maintain your credentials. And you would obtain those continuing coach education units by attending training, webinars, conferences, training events, training courses, which have been accredited by the International Coaching Federation for a number of continuing coach education units. And at the end of that sort of training, you'll be given a certificate which says you attended this event on this date, and it is been accredited for 1.0 core competence continuing coach education units or a 0.5 resource development continuing coach education units. And you need to get a certain number of each of those types of education units in order to maintain your credentials. So that ongoing learning and development is quite a structured thing with the ICF, and you do need to have a plan for it and to take it seriously, so that as your credential, as the clock runs down on your time as a credential holder, you don't suddenly have to sprint to get in all of those 40 hours of training bagged and tagged so you can evidence that you've done it, because they do require you to evidence it with your certificates. So that's learning and development as a coach. That's the formal requirement for it. And parameter number 3 of a coaching mindset is develops an ongoing reflective practice to enhance one's coaching. In my view, this is essential to really understand the coaching competences. So if right now you're being distracted by emails coming in, text messages on your phone, then I suggest you stop monitoring your emails and you put your phone to one side, because for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to be talking about reflective practice. And this is the most important bit. So if you get nothing else from this webinar, please listen to the next piece about reflective practice. Now, we've already covered some of the tools you can use. We've been looking at the updated competency model. We've been looking at the PCC markers. And I'm going to introduce you to a third resource from the ICF website now, which is the competence ratings table. Now, with a bit of luck, you will now be seeing something which says ICF Core Competencies ratings. Great. Now, this is, I have to put a caveat on this. This document has not yet been updated by the ICF to reflect the new 8 competence model. This is still using the previous 11 competence model. However, I'm sure there will be an awful lot of pull through to the new model. So anything that's in here, I'm sure will still be running. There's nothing here which will be wrong. It will simply be tidied up and maybe 1 or 2 things added. But as you look at this, bearing in mind, these competences in my view are the crown jewels. The language in here can be very helpful. You can see that the structure of this document is at the basic level, the associate certified coach level. It's pretty simple. When you get to the PCC level, it's a bit more detailed. At the MCC level, it becomes more all-encompassing and more sophisticated. But the thing I particularly like about this table is the language, actually. So when I first read this, I was instinctively drawn to the MCC level. And when I read the coach evidence as a complete curiosity that is undiluted by need to perform, and then down to competence 8 there, the coach's invitation to exploration precedes and is significantly greater than the coach's invitation to solution. What came to me was actually some phrases from the Bible. The meek shall inherit the earth. They that are last shall come first, and they that are first shall come last. The language is biblical. It's mellifluous. It's higher frequency stuff. Compare it to what's going on down here, which is pretty mechanical. It's like reading the Haynes, car maintenance mechanical or the highway code. Up here, it's like reading the Bible. And it's also interesting that this doesn't actually really tell you what to do. It's quite mysterious. It's quite subtle. And it's only with continuous practice and reflection that the subtlety and richness of this language becomes apparent. So the first, I don't know why, but when I first started doing reflective practice, just after I'd done my diploma, I went straight to the MCC level of competence. I was just curious. I wanted to really understand them. And so many of these, I printed them off, were all question marks. What does this mean? What does that mean? How the hell do you do that in a session? And then through this process of continuous reflection and practice, gradually I began to understand. It was like the light slowly filtered through, and the sort of understanding and awareness began to dawn very slowly. There's still a couple of things in there I don't really get fully, but I'm only a PCC coach, so I've got a long way to go. But there is something rather magical and mysterious about the way these are written, and I think they're written deliberately like that, in an innovative, open-ended way that requires you to interpret them. You have to, if you like, live the experience of coaching before you really get what's going on here. I think that's what's so wonderful about them. So this is a really fantastic resource to use in conjunction with the pure competence model and the PCC markers. So what else was I going to say about that? Yeah. So now let's look at how you actually do this in practice. I'm going to switch now to a template for reflective practice. Now, are you seeing that, Kat? Yeah. Yeah, cool. This is available as a shared resource on GuestForward. So when you register for the webinar, you'll have seen that. You can access and download this. It's exactly the same as the one that's on front of your screen. And I'll walk you through it now. I'm just going to check what's in the chat there. See what we've got. Where do you log those credentials so that you can evidence them? There is a form for ICF. There is a way ICF member can log it on the ICF Global website. And when you come to update your credentials, you will do that on your own individual member's account. Oh, well, the next thing on, there you are. The ICF has a portal where you log your CC hours. Are there any useful recommended reflection tools that we could use as a framework? We're doing it now. I like to lose Ross's mind. Thank you, Brenda. No comment. So here we are. Here's a reflective practice template. So I suggest you put some metadata. You can make your own template up here. I suggest you put some metadata in. For example, the date, the coach's name, the duration of the session, the type of coaching you're doing, and in some context, it might be part of a career coaching program, might be session 3 of a pack of 6, something like that, just so you can remember the context. And then here, have the PCC markers. Have the 8 parameters of the new ICF coaching competency model, and then look at the markers for each one of those, and then evaluate your own session. And particularly where you've got a question mark, whether you only were able to demonstrate that competence in full or in part, or you're not sure, or where you put a no because you really don't understand it, then the observations you make there can be very useful for what you need to learn. And then there's your self-talk. What were you saying to yourself during the session, and did your self-talk change? I know mine does. And quite often at the beginning of a session, I'm thinking, where's this going? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm feeling clunky. I'm feeling very rusty. I'm confused. I don't know if I've got rapport with a client, whatever. Then by the end of the session, you're in flow, the time's just flown by, and things are happening as you'd hope they would. Briefly, what was the outcome for the coachee? Did they achieve their outcomes in whole or in part, or did they exceed them? I love it when you have a measure of success, which is maybe the client wants to be, they're 5 out of 10 at the start, they want to be 8 out of 10 by the end, and they finish up at 11 out of 10. Amazing. And then this is a really useful box. How could you improve? Based on the things that you did well here and you're not sure about and you didn't do or were incomplete, where are the areas you need to look at to improve? So this is a basic template. I've developed this from the NMS Coaching Learning Journal. And you can use a notebook, your PC, a tablet or a phone, anything as you wish to record this information. But it is personal data about your client. So do remember to ask for permission and to protect it appropriately. There's the key for those yes, question mark, and no. And as you build up your reflections, you'll begin to notice patterns. And if you've got 10 or 20 different client reflections in your notebook or on your tablet or whatever, you'll see similar observations that you're making about yourself coming up time and time again. And when you see those patterns, that's something that you can then address. You think, actually, I might need some more training, or I need to go back and really understand that competence, or I need to change my process. I need to have a different takeoff to my sessions or a different landing mechanism. I need to do something different. And also you will notice the subtlety and richness of the competences beginning to filter through when you're in doubt, when you're not sure. You then go back to competences, reread them, and start to get some understanding. And also it can provoke questions, thoughts, comments to put to your coach trainer, to your mentor coach, your supervisor. So you can get other people's input to help you. And as you gain experience with using the template, I encourage you to customize it by adding your own headings so you can be the best coach that you could be. Now, I've just did a quick look last night at where I am with this. These are my 4 reflective practice notebooks. I started coaching and I did my diploma 2014-15. I immediately started reflecting on them. And I was using the basic template to start with. Then I got a little bit more sophisticated by the second notebook, and I was including things that I was finding useful. So, for example, I always include what is my intention for the client as a field in my reflection. And occasionally I have a clunky session. I think, oh, I was really a bit off key there. And usually it's because my intention was no longer unswervingly positive for the client. For example, when I was applying for my PCC, I started recording my sessions on Zoom, and my intention was actually to get a good recording. Now, that was just a little bit different from being unswervingly positive for the client. And as a result, I had that sort of driving test mentality. And I was stopping at a junction, mirror, signal, maneuver, turn right. And I was getting a bit sort of Janet and John about my coaching. I was becoming a bit self-conscious. So I always find things like intention for the session. If I'm a bit off, that's usually where I've gone a little bit awry. I mentioned the coaching principles earlier on. I have them as well. I always check myself against the coaching principles. Was I compliant with those? Was I congruent with them? As well as looking at the PCC markers. And I also look at the MCC competencies. And I've got a few other things in there as well. So, you can customize your reflective template for yourself, and you will add to it as you learn things about coaching, as you discover more, as you do more training, as you move up the credential levels. So let's just look at a couple of random things from my notebook. So here we go. 21st of September 2016. My self-talk. Interrupting too much, ? Otherwise session flowed well. What could I do better? Allow the client to speak without interruptions. Let's pick another one. 30th of November 2016. My self-talk. Good flow, good dynamic contracting to address the issue. Briefly strategized, good use of perceptual positions. What could I do better? Read my warm-up script properly beforehand, before a coaching session. Let's look at another book. 29th of May 2018, my self-talk. Unsure where the session was going. It was an emergent session. In other words, we didn't have a clear coaching agreement at the start because the client didn't really know what they wanted out of the session. They just wanted to talk and allow that to emerge. I trusted myself in the process, but felt like I was having to work at times. I relaxed and let it happen, often in silence. What could I do better? Not sure. Did not feel like a great session, but not sure why. Afternote, I was probably experiencing transference and parallel processing and picking up what the coachee was feeling. And if you work with supervisors, this is what they will tell you how supervision works. You pick up through transference and parallel processing what the client is experiencing, and the supervisor will pick it up from you. And I think in this session, my confusion and doubt in the session was actually just a reflection of what the client was going through. But I was feeling it for me and not understanding that at the time. Let's do one more. 22nd of July this year. My self-talk, acknowledge and let go of my thoughts, beliefs, and being solution-focused, and focus on what the client's thinking and feeling. Be willing not to know. The session then flowed, and I was confident in coaching on the client's shadow side. That's what I'm drawn to, is coaching with my client's shadow side, the dark side, the scary place they don't want to go to. Often a bit of trauma in there, difficult life stories. How could I improve? Refresh my coaching group at the start and check the direction of the coaching during the session. That's a master certified coach competence that I'm working towards. So I hope you can see that these, however you choose to do it, whether you choose to do it electronically on some device or paper and pen in a notebook, is absolutely fine. But it's an incredibly powerful tool for learning and development, and really getting to understand those competences, these are, say, the crown jewels of the ICF, and the very, the beating heart of what a coaching mindset's all about. So let's just have a look what's in the chat. How do you avoid transference and parallel processing, particularly that affects you? Yeah, I was going to speak about this anyway, but essentially, when you're in a coaching conversation, in a coaching session, you're having two conversations. You're having a conversation with the client. You're also having a conversation with yourself, which is your self-talk. And with experience, you will learn to understand the difference. So, in fact, let me go to what I was going to speak about on this now. So when you're having this coaching session, you've got these two conversations going, one between you and the client and one with yourself. And it's important to distinguish your stuff from what's coming up in the session. But the transference and parallel processing is actually very helpful, because you will pick up intuitively and somatically stuff that's not your stuff, but it's just coming in the session. You will suddenly have feelings and thoughts that seem to be coming from nowhere. You think, oh, I suddenly feel very unsure, or that I've done something wrong, or scared, or something like that. And it's not your self-chatter in the back of your mind. It's not something that the client's saying directly to you, but it's the energy between you that you're picking up on, because you're coaching the whole person. Now, it just so happens that my coaching style is transpersonal. I work with values, energy, vitality, and spirit. So I am naturally attuned more to that way of doing stuff. Some other people might be more cognitive or ontological, where it's all about the words and the thoughts, or whatever, whatever. But if you do have these, feelings and thoughts that seem to be coming out of nowhere, that's actually useful. It's not something you want to avoid or try and suppress in a coaching session. It's actually telling you something very useful, and then you can work with that and say, all of a sudden this session, it just feels like there's so much doubt, or there's fear, or there's uncertainty. What's going on? And so you can actually use that as a tool. And I think that's an incredibly powerful way of coaching. Warm-up scripts, an example of a warm-up script. I wonder what I meant by that. I can't try and remember. It's going back a few years now. Yes, I think before. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about then. That's quite handy, isn't it? What I've got is I built up a. Basically, I created a draft email, which I continuously added to in certainly the first 2 or 3 years of my coaching practice, where I captured all of the things that I thought were really useful to learn about coaching. And then I would read these before I went into a coaching session. And that would just get my mindset right. So again, it was really all about embodying coaching mindset. So the first thing I had in my warm-up script was those 7 coaching principles from Judy Starr's coaching manual on page 30. I will maintain my commitment to support the individual. That's the unswervingly positive intention. My coaching relationships are built upon truth, openness, and trust. The coachee is responsible for the results they're creating. The coachee is capable of much better results than they're currently generating. I will maintain focus on what the coachee thinks and feels and experiences. I know that coachees can generate perfect solutions. My coaching conversations are built on equality. I got some other stuff about respectful assumptions there. Then came on to my intention. When I first started doing this, my intention was to really understand my clients. And then it evolved. It became to hold space for the client. And then it became to help my clients develop self-awareness, and then in due course, self-acceptance, self-approval, and ultimately self-love. And that's my current intention, has been the last 5 years. And whenever I get stuck in a session and time's running out, or the client's not making any progress, I get that mental barrier. It's not working. I'm not coaching very well. Then it's just pause, take a mental deep breath, let it go, and refocus on the client and their issue. And as if by magic, the perfect question will pop into your mind. I like the Carl Rogers stuff that Animas teach around the conditions for movement and change, and a few other things that I've picked up along the way. So you can, again, I encourage you to develop your own warm-up script. What are the things that help you to get into a coaching mindset before a session? These are what helped me. What else is there? So I think that's where we're at on that. Let's just go back to the main event. So that was the reflective practice template. Let me just check my notes. Yeah, and checking this last night, I've just gone through 1,500 hours of coaching hours logged, and I counted of all the sessions I've evaluated and reflected on. 191 coaching sessions have been evaluated in these 4 notebooks, and my sessions tend to be longer, so that's probably about 25% of my sessions. And I did all of them for the first couple of years, and then I go through periods where I cool off from doing it, and I just decided to get back into it. And because I'm mentor coaching as well, I'm evaluating other people's sessions. So I'm working with the competencies, with the markers, with the ratings table, almost every day. So it's just, embedded in the brain. So I'm going to pause there, because I think this particular part, the reflective practice, is so important to a coaching mindset. And it's the single most powerful thing for any coach, for their learning development as a coach. That I'm, if there are any questions, I'm happy to take any questions on that now. Oh, we've got a raised hand there. Go ahead, please, Dario.
Hi, hello. My question is, when did you find more useful to write your reflective practice? Straight after the session, you allocate sometimes once a week. What's your strategy in writing this practice, this reflective practice?
Yeah. Well, I've discovered that it has to be the same day. If it's the next day, I've lost the immediacy, but I can do it, a few hours later in the evening, but it has to be the same day. And what I used to find most helpful was every 2 or 3 months, I go for a quiet coffee and I take my notebook with me, and I just read through all of the reflections. I would particularly, that last paragraph, how could I improve? And then notice looking out for any patterns. And that often led to me thinking, oh, you know what, I really need to discuss that with other coaches or with a mentor coach or supervisor, or I need to go back to the competence because I don't really quite understand how you do that in a session. And there's still a couple of things that I still can't weave into my session, even though they're there in the competences at the MCC level. I'm still working on that. You know, these things they're not a quick fix, some of them. So constant practice and reflection, but I would say, you know, same day for me. I have to reflect on it the same day, otherwise I've lost the immediacy. So we're on to 2.4 now. Let's go back to the competency. And this is embodying coaching mindset. 2.4. Remain as aware of and open to the influence of context and culture on self and others. So this is about viewing the client holistically, not in isolation from their environment and context. It's about understanding cultural difference. And this is one of those additions. It wasn't in the previous version, so this is an enhancement of the previous competency model. So I think it's quite useful. And then definition 2.5. Use awareness of self and one's intuition to benefit clients. So we have touched upon this to some extent already. Let me give you one of my favorite quotes now. This is the ever quotable Albert Einstein. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the conscious mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. I think that's great. Now, we all have intuition to a greater or lesser extent, and we can all use that in the service of our clients. And if we look at PCC marker for competence number 7, evokes awareness, marker 7.5 is the coach shares with no attachment observations, intuitions, comments, thoughts or feelings, and invites the client's exploration through verbal or tonal invitation. So this is an example of how competence number 2, embodying coaching mindset, and competence number 7, evoking awareness, are mutually reinforcing. But this idea of using one's intuition, to benefit clients, so resonates with my coaching style. It's not everybody's coaching style, but it certainly is with mine. And I think it's something that you can develop with practice. It's, as I say, it's that stuff that comes up in the session. You don't really know how you know it. You don't know where it's coming from, but it's not something the client's directly telling you. It's not your self-talk, but you just have this thought or feeling. It's like a little pop in the mind, or the body, or the spirit, or the heart. You suddenly feel this little pop of awareness. You think, oh, yeah, okay, let's use that, and then you can just share it. And there's the competence. There's the marker for that. You share with no attachment your observation, your intuition, your comment, your thought or feeling, and invite the client's exploration. So I've just got this feeling that, you know, there's doubt, there's fear, there's uncertainty. What's going on there? Or what's coming up for you? Something like that. So that is a wonderful element of a coaching mindset. Being intuitive. So 2.6 develops and maintains the ability to regulate one's emotions. So this we have touched on now. Be mindfully aware of your own thoughts and feelings without getting involved in them. Concentrate on what the client is thinking and feeling. But that said, if you do feel something coming up in the session, then that previous competence 2.5 applies. Use awareness of self and one's intuitions to benefit the clients. And I mentioned this thing about the two conversations. You're having a conversation with the client. You're also having a conversation with yourself. Distinguish between the two. But if you're getting thoughts and feelings, intuitions coming up from the energy between you and the client, then you can use that. However, if you find your own emotions derailing you, that is a barrier to coaching. So the technique here is to acknowledge it, let it go, and refocus on the client, and all will be well. So moving on to 2.7 of Embodying Coaching Mindset, mentally and emotionally prepares for sessions. And this is about ensuring that you're in a resourceful state to serve the client. And the ICF Code of Ethics is here, so let's have a little look at that. So, bear with me. Sorry, leave that there. So let's see, we're in the ICF Code of Ethics here. We're going to go down, let me show you where it is actually. I'll go right to the back to the top. So there we have it, ICF Code of Ethics. We're going to look at one of the ethical standards in part 4. And this is in the section 2, responsibilities, practice and performance. So as an ICF professional, I, at 17, recognize my personal limitations or circumstances that may impair, conflict with, or interfere with my coaching performance or my professional coaching relationships. I will reach out for support to determine the action to be taken, and if necessary, promptly seek relevant professional guidance. This may include suspending or terminating my coaching relationships. And this is all about fitness to practice, mentally and emotionally preparing for sessions. It's all about making sure you're fit to practice, which is an important part of a coaching mindset. And if you're not fit to practice, then as it says, you need to either suspend or terminate your coaching relationships, but also it's appropriate to seek support. And that then takes us into the next part, the final part of Embodies a Coaching Mindset, which I'll just move us back to, which is seeks help, 2.8, seeks help from outside resources when necessary. So if you're not in a resourceful state, you need to seek the appropriate help to return to a resourceful state before resuming your coaching. The obvious support here is supervision. So again, it links into ethical standard number 17 that we've just looked at. Now, the ICF does not require coaches to be in supervision. It's recommended, but it's not actually a requirement, even at the MCC level. However, the ICF does require coaches who are seeking credentials or who are looking to maintain their credentials to have 10 hours of mentor coaching with a coach who holds that credential or a higher one. Let's just see what's coming up in the chat there. There's a couple of questions. Has the move to remote coaching impacted your intuition, the feel for what's going on for the client? And if so, have you found a way to overcome this? Oddly enough, and that was from Sonia. Thank you, Sonia. Actually, no. When I first started coaching by video conference, we were using Skype in those days. I thought, oh, this is going to be really, a pretty poor substitute for actually coaching in person. At real live, in the real world, in person, face to face. But I found no difference actually. And what I also noticed is that some clients, particularly female clients, has to be said, for the first couple of sessions, they often don't want to have the camera on. They haven't quite got that trust and confidence in the coaching relationship sometimes to have their camera on. And so all I've got is the words. All I've got is the voice and any sounds. And what I found was that in some ways that's even better. And I liken it to, it's a bit like driving at night. All you need is the cat's eyes, the road signs, and the street lights. Everything else is almost irrelevant. You're just concentrating on the absolutely important, essential things. And the human voice carries so much. And we can also hear what's the rate of their breathing. Are they sobbing? Are they choking? Are they snuffling? Are they coughing? Are they spluttering? Are they shifting about? And so actually, as long as I've got the voice, as long as I can hear them, I'm okay. I've got everything I need. And I don't feel there's any loss of intuition or feeling by not being able to see them or just seeing them through the video camera. So oddly enough, no, it doesn't make any difference to me. It might to other people, but I do feel that I'm just as present. I'm getting just as much through the voice and the camera lens. And from Jen, practically, what sort of things do you do to emotionally and mentally prepare for sessions? Well, I think it's being covered by competence 2.7 there, making sure you're in a resourceful state. And if you're not, getting yourself back through supervision or whatever. But in my case, I mentioned I had that warm-up script and checking my intention. That's always a good one. If I'm not sure, if I've got a session coming, I'm not sure if I'm absolutely on it. What's my intention for this client, for this session? And then if it's not unswervingly positive, can it be made unswervingly positive for this session? And almost always the answer is yes. But if that ever becomes no, I would have to say to that client, I'm sorry, I'm just not on it today. Can we please reschedule? Or if that happens more than a couple of times with that client, say, look, I'm sorry, it's just not working for me. I can't serve you as I would like to. Would you like me to signpost to someone else? So, you know, you have to be, this is about integrity, and that's one of the values of the ICF. You have to be brutally honest with yourself. I hope I've answered your question, Jan, but do come back to me if you need more on that. And Astrid is making the observation that she loves the idea of voice only. Thank you, Astrid. So in summary of what we've covered, we've covered a lot of ground in this session. I've given you an overview, the context of the updated ICF competency model and how it's different from and an improvement on the previous model. I've explained what a coaching mindset is and how you can embody it by using those updated PCC markers. We've looked at the definition of the updated competence number 2, particularly in this session, embodying a coaching mindset. And I've explained what the 8 parameters of embodying coaching mindset mean in practice. We've looked at how you can implement reflective practice in your coaching, and I've shared a suggested template for reflective practice, which is copied in the shared resources on Guestboard. Is there anything I've not yet covered? Kat, can you think of anything that I've not covered in this session? Or anybody else? Please punch it into the chat if there's something I've not covered. And in conclusion of the formal part, I would say that this new competence number 2, embodies a coaching mindset, helps all coaches to do what the good coaches have always done. It encourages you to undertake ongoing learning development. It encourages you to establish a reflective practice, and it encourages you to prepare mentally and emotionally for your coaching sessions. But of all of that, in my view, practicing coaching reflectively is the single most powerful thing that you can do, or any coach can do, for their learning and development and to enhance their coaching competence. So I was really pleased to see this new competence appear when the ICF updated its competence model. And if we go back to the Anima Summit, there were 2 summits, I think it was 2016 and 2017. In one of those, Nick Bolton was on the stage and he said, guys, one thing I encourage you to do is to practice coaching reflectively. I thought that sounds like a good idea. And that's why I'm doing it. And here we are, you know, 5 years later, 4 or 5 years later, and it's now formally in the ICF competency model, is to practice reflectively. I think that is a great thing. I've shared that resource template for you, and I encourage you to customize it with any additional headings that help you to be the best coach that you can be. Now, I've completed the formal part of my presentation, so we'll stop the screen share there, and we can go to free open forum Q&A if there are any questions. So let's keep an eye on the questions. So please either raise your hand or punch a question into the chat. Oh, we've got one there. Was that Astrid asking a question? Yeah, go ahead, please, Astrid.
Hi. Yeah, I just had a question around that sentence, I can serve you as I'd like to. How do you go about that? Is there a way that you do that? And a magic trick?
I think it's part of a coaching mindset. I mean, why are we there? We are there with our client to serve them. That we are the facilitator of change. They are in a state of confusion, incongruence, or stuckness, and they want to get clarity. They want to get confident. They want to move forward in their lives. And so there's no point us being there unless we can help them to do that through using our coaching skills. So we are there to serve them. And so I think it's just another way of saying, what is the purpose of coaching? It's to serve our clients. to help them get where they want to be. Now, we have no responsibility for that. They're responsible for their outcomes, but through the process of coaching, we know how they can help to achieve that for themselves. Does that answer the question, Astrid?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir.
How you get into that mindset, I think, is what this whole competence is all about. Embodying coaching mindset is everything we've covered today. So let's see what else is coming up in the chat.
We have a hand up from Joanna.
Okay, go ahead, please. Joanna. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Ross. Thanks for that. That was really useful. It was just a quick one. When I was doing the diploma and I was recording my practice clients, it was obviously really easy to kind of really remember all of the detail when you're doing reflective practice. But what's my question? When you have paying clients, obviously it might be a bit more difficult to kind of get them to agree to being recorded. So I was just curious, with all that reflection that you'd done, was that just purely from your memory of the session, or do you typically kind of have a couple of sort of low paying clients who you get to agree to being recorded? I just wondered kind of how you've done it as a professional coach when you're actually charging properly, rather than when you're kind of working with practice clients, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, absolutely. There are two, if you like, two levels of reflection. There's the first, the basic one is, in my case, the notebook level of reflection, where I go through all my headings and look at the competences and so on, and evaluate them fairly quickly, but nonetheless fairly thoroughly. And then there's a more formal evaluation, as if it was an application for credential. So when I'm working as a mentor coach, I have a more formal mind map of all the competences, and I will look through them and in much more detail establish whether or not that competence is met. So it's a slightly more formal process, and occasionally I will evaluate my own recorded coaching sessions in that way. I'll actually listen to it, not just from memory, but I'll actually listen to it right through and mark it and score it as if I was scoring one of my mentees. And I'm going through the ICF PCC marker assessor training at the moment, which is very detailed. I mean, the assessor's resource handbook is over 150 pages. Behind me, it's really quite something. And that's casting new light on this, because it's very sophisticated at the top end, this stuff. But I would say there are two ways of doing it. You can do it from memory, and of course I have the PCC markers and the competence table in front of me when I'm doing that from memory, but I also then sometimes formally evaluate my own sessions as if they were an application for a credential.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yeah, so you still record some of your sessions?
I record all of them. The default is that they're all recorded. It's in my terms and conditions.
Okay.
And the reason for doing that is if you coach without recording your sessions, and then you need to bag and tag some for your application for your credential, when you first record your sessions, you go into driving test mode. Okay, mirror, signal, maneuver, stop at the junction, look right, look left, look right, and then, and you become very self-conscious and you lose the flow of it. So you have to be unaware that the sessions are being recorded. So I would encourage everybody, with permission, to record all of your sessions by default, so that if you have a really good one, think, oh, that would do nicely, I can use that one.
Yeah.
And of course, then you've got it recorded. You can evaluate, and you become completely unself-conscious from the fact that it's been recorded.
Time to update my T's and C's then, I think.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Well,
Thanks.
looking to see if there are any more hands going on. Let's see what's in the chat. What have we got here? Like the question about intention from my client. From Jill, plenty of food for thought here. Many thanks. Just about to embark on my coaching journey. Great believer in reflection and lifelong learning. So feeling reassured and really connected with that. Thank you. Lovely. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Oh, we've got Mandy with a hand up there, please. Go ahead, Mandy.
Hi, I'm sorry, it's a bit of a technical question. I'm just starting to wanted to submit my Animas diploma and looking at all the recording, and it's really interesting you say that you record everything. Now, I do most of my coaching on the phone as well, but I haven't actually found a way to record everything on the phone. I can do it on Zoom, and it's a really practical one. I just wondered how you record your phone calls.
I don't coach over the phone. So
okay.
If somebody knows a technical solution, there must be an app where you can record it, then please share it in the chat. There must be somebody who knows how to do that on this call.
So do you do Zoom with no camera then, or something?
Well, I do Zoom as we are now.
Yeah.
And then sometimes some of my clients don't want to be seen, so they switch their camera off, but I'm always visible.
Oh, I see. Okay, because I do a lot of mine on the phone, and I'm just thinking the whole recording thing is becoming a bit of a problem because I can't work out how to do it. But anyway, there will be apps, I know. I just wondered if anyone had one off the top of their head, but thanks so much.
But of course, if you've got a Zoom account, Zoom's brilliant because there's just this button at the bottom which says record.
Yeah,
so easy.
Yeah.
Couldn't be easier.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. We've got Sonia there. Please go ahead, Sonia.
Hi, sorry, I feel like I might be numbing this a bit. Could you expand for me what is meant by whole person coaching? I have an idea, obviously, in my head as to what it is, but it's one of those things that seems to be slightly different for different people.
Yeah, I don't know if it's defined anywhere in the competencies. My understanding would be everything. So it's what the client is saying. It's their physiology, if they're grimacing or, blushing or twitching or whatever. It's their body language, what they're, some people rock, some people twitch and, scratch. It's breathing rate. It's all the things that if you do NLP and you learn about how the body can give off all these signs, how you build rapport, you pick up on all these little signs. It's also the energy between you and the client. What are you feeling? What does your intuition tell you? What's your spirit telling you? What's if you read auras? I don't, but some people can see auras. Whatever you notice about the whole of the client, it's everything. What's going on in your body? If you suddenly feel tightness in your body, chances are that's come from transference and parallel processing from the client. So okay, that's part of the whole person. So I'm getting this tightness in my tummy. Is there something going on for you, client? And usually there is. So it's absolutely everything that you're noticing about the client. And the only thing you need to be aware of is to make sure that just isn't your stuff. Mm-hmm. As long as it's not your stuff, but it's coming from the client or it's emerging from the energy between you in the session, then it's part of the whole person of the client.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I've answered that in a correct way, but that's just my understanding of it, Sonia.
That's really useful.
Good. What have we got here? Apps to record over the phone can be tricky. For your assessment, you may find it easy to use Zoom. Okay. What I'm hearing from your warm-up script is that it's more about principles instead of coaching questions or tricks. Yes, Haris Al-Akbar, I would say that's right. It's principles, and yeah, I think it's more about principles than anything. It's not tricks, it's principles. Absolutely. From Karen, thank you. I'm preparing for ACC application. This is going to be helpful. Thank you, Veronica. Got to leave. Cool. Any other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns about embodying a coaching mindset? Or indeed about the competency model in the round?
I do have, hi, thank you so much for all this. Myself, I do have a question. Is sometimes because of all these criteria you've got to respect, I have a feeling that I become like a robot rather than just myself with my personality. So at which point, I am a very new coach. At which point as a coach, did you feel that you had really integrated this so much that actually you don't really have to think of them, even though I hear you are doing self-reflection practice, which I'm sure help, but at which point could you feel completely free of all these criteria to think, oh my God, I've not done this or that?
Do you know what? I think the first time I experienced that freedom was actually during the diploma training. So when you're doing some of the very first coaching sessions you ever do, in those days we were doing it in person. We'd meet in London and we'd do the training in London, and we'd go into breakout rooms and you'd be coaching one of the person for the first time, and you'd never coached before, hardly ever. You're using maybe a new model, a new tool, a new approach. And I learned that you can just be with somebody else. And what it really boils down to is it's actually very simple coaching. Are you curious? Or first of all, do you have a positive intention to serve them? Are you curious? Are you remaining grounded in curiosity? And are you listening to understand? And if you've got those three things, everything else just falls apart. Everything else is just, you know, the stuff around the edges. But if you're positively intentioned for them, you're grounded in curiosity, and you're listening to understand them, you really won't go far wrong. It really is that simple. You can just enjoy it.
And sometimes myself, what I find very challenging is to be able to finish a session without setting a goal. Well, I've got a direct marketing background. It must not help. But, you know, because I heard you to say, and I know it, but sometimes I find it a bit hard not to let your client go without, well, what is the next action? I'm not talking like that in coaching, but you understand the idea.
Yes, but of course, in the facilitating client growth competence, you ask them what they're learning about themselves and their situation and how they can use that learning. And then that's how they design the action. So the actions arise naturally. And what I've found is that there is a natural flow of a coaching session. So it's okay, what are we here to talk about? What would you like out of the session? Tell me more about that. Here's some things I noticed. What have you learned? How can you use your learning? And when the session's flown like that, they will spontaneously come up with their actions.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So, you know, and if they haven't got any actions at the end of it, you could say, well, is there anything that you need to do with your learnings today? Now, the actions could simply be to reflect or to be with them. They may not be physical actions. They may simply be feeling actions or cognitive reflective actions. So
that's a very good point.
It's just as valid. They're still actions. And I think it actually says, you know, the actions can be thoughts, feelings, reflections. They don't have to be concrete actions. And it's whatever they want to do as a result. Now, you can also suggest actions, and because you're partnering with them in collaboration, and there may be one or two things that are very obvious to you that they haven't thought to do, and you could say, well, you might want to consider this as well.
But this is where the boundary for me is very thin, is when are you really the coach listening and welcoming your client and the coach directing, you know, when you, because you talked about intuition, so you use your intuition and you really, there is this to suggest, but where is the boundaries?
I think as long as you let the client lead and then you're just supporting, you're not leading. So when it comes to how can they use their learning as designing actions, ask them what they can do with their learnings. And then if they haven't got anything, then you can offer, say, well, there's one or two things I can see. Would it be helpful if I share these with you? And then disclaiming them, so it's completely up to you what you do with these. But from what you've said and everything we've noticed in the session, it might be helpful if you reflect on this and maybe consider that. So you're offering it in a very respectful way where it's up to them to decide whether they take it or not.
Great. And now I have a last but technical question. I coach in French and English. When you want to do this kind of credential, are you allowed to submit in both languages, or you've got to choose your language?
The honest answer to that is I don't know off the top of my head, but it will tell you on the ICF website. And you can always ask the ICF, simply email them, support@icf.org, whatever it is, you know, global. And they'll come back to you in a couple of days and they'll answer that question for you very quickly.
Thank you very much for your insight.
You're very welcome.
I can probably provide something on that. So I believe you can submit in English or French, but you may need to provide a transcript in English as well as French. It does explain on the ICF website if you want to submit in a different language, and they have, I think, a list on there of all of the different languages they accept, because obviously the ICF is global. So it does try to make provisions to be able to do that in different ways.
Thank you, Marine.
Sorry, me again. It's completely technical. Could you, I just made the first 4 minutes of this webinar. Where did you find this screen you show us during, where was it on the website? Because I just went on the website and I could not find it. Could you show again the passage?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll just do some quick screen shares. So first of all, the PCC markers, and there they are. You can just go into the search bar and type in either performance evaluation or PCC markers and search for it, and you'll find them. Similarly, the competencies, similarly, the ratings table, and similarly the code of ethics. So they're all there. It is a little bit difficult to navigate, but they're pretty straightforward.
Ross, if you don't mind if I just do some signposting, is that okay?
Please do.
Brilliant. So firstly, thank you all for joining us. It's been a great second session and hopefully you've all taken a lot away to go and think about. If you are looking to get hold of that reflective practice sheet that Ross shared with us, it is in the guest board platform. You go to the schedule, which is where you'll have found the Zoom link for this. It's just to the right hand side. And that's also where we'll be sharing any presentations and recordings. So you'll be able to find all of that there. As you know, we have other core competency lunch and learns going on every Tuesday and Friday throughout the rest of this month. So hopefully I'll see some of you on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. And last but not least, in that guest board platform, there's also a section called the board. And if after today you're interested in having some ICF mentoring, coaching or supervision from Ross, you'll be able to find all of his details in one of the threads there. So definitely go and have a look. And I think we have another question.
Yeah, just correct one thing, Kat. I'm not a supervisor.
Okay.
But
coaching or mentoring.
Yeah, coaching. But yeah, Harris has asked the question, how do you differentiate between intuition and your stuff? I'd say, Harris, it comes with experience. The process of reflecting, it allows you to capture what is your self-talk. That's your stuff. Your intuitions are something that is arising in the session. It's not your self-talk. It's you're picking it up from the energy between you and the client, and you will be able to distinguish better and better between self-talk and intuition with practice and experience. So that's the way to do it. Is just keep on practicing, keep on reflecting. Another question coming in here from Sam. Are there some PCC or MCC coaches you would recommend studying their videos, modeling their approach? I actually looked a few years ago for some good quality PCC video recordings of coaching sessions that I could then share with my mentees, and I couldn't find any, so I recorded some of my own. I've got 6 out there. I can share those with you. Let's see if I can find them now, and I'll punch them in the chat.
Ross, if you could share those with me afterwards instead, okay. I'll be able to share them with everyone on the platform. Yeah,
I'll send links to recordings of 6 fairly short sessions, about 30 to 40 minutes of me specifically recording for PCC demonstration purposes. And Kat can make those available. Cool. Nice question, thank you. We've still got time. There's still time for more if you want some. What have we got here? Thank you, Kat. Very useful. Yeah. And what we can do, if you like, Kat, I mean, if you want to bring it formally to an end, but I'll stay on the call for another until 2:30, and then anybody wants to stay on and chat post the formal session, I'm quite happy to do that.